Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
You are about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
All right. We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. Daliah, 1-877-DOCDALI. So this study that we saw over the weekend made some people nervous, where instant coffee drinkers may be at much higher risk for a blinding eye disease called macular degeneration. Macular degeneration is causing one of my family members to lose her eyesight. And to think that an instant coffee habit could have contributed to that, pretty scary. Now, coffee has a slew of health benefits. We have had study after study showing coffee to help heart risk, dementia, preventing muscle loss, cancer prevention. Coffee has had a lot of health benefits, but is there something different as it pertains to instant coffee? So this is being reported by newsmedical.net and published in the journal Food Science and Nutrition, where researchers from China's Hubei University of Medicine wanted to look at if there was a relationship. Age-related macular degeneration is one of the leading causes of vision loss among older people worldwide. And seeing it happen in my family, I am blown away. So macular degeneration, the macula is a part of the retina in the center that could start to degenerate and affect your central vision. Dry AMD is a little slower, takes some time, but can still be devastating. Wet AMD is when you have abnormal blood vessels that leak and grow and affect the macula. And so unfortunately, people with macular degeneration, they lose their central vision or the ability to see things clearly. They might be able to keep their periphery, so they keep kind of looking to the side or putting things to the corner of their eye. But it's still devastating, and many of them are legally blind. Well, what researchers did is they looked at 500,000 individuals, and they looked at their coffee consumption, whether they drank instant coffee, decaffeinated, or fresh ground. And then they wanted to look at if there was a genetic predisposition for those individuals who were drinking instant coffee and then a risk of dry AMD. Now, dry AMD is the less severe and the more common one. And they did find a correlation. They said instant coffee had a high correlation to instances of dry AMD. However, the decaf and the ground coffee did not. Fortunately, they did not see wet AMD with any of the coffee brands. But this risk was almost eightfold. They think it could be because of the acrylamide, oxidized lipids, and other compounds that you might not see in fresh brewed coffee, but you might see in instant. Now, this is definitely a concern, because many of you who need your coffee, you obviously the easier, faster way to get it is sometimes the more consumed. And we spoke about acrylamide years ago when back in 2017, there were studies looking at coffee and cancer. In fact, I think in California, the Council for Education and Research on Toxins wanted coffee manufacturers, distributors, and retailers to post warnings about the acrylamide content, because back in '86, The Safe Drinking Water and Toxic Enforcement Act required businesses to expose individuals to toxic chemicals in the course of doing business to give warnings to such individuals. So this isn't the first time we heard about acrylamide in coffee. So what is acrylamide? Well, acrylamide is a chemical used by many industrial products or agencies to produce plastics, adhesives, food packaging. It's even used in the treatment of drinking water. But interesting, you make acrylamide when you heat, fry, bake, or roast food. They say it's produced if you heat, fry, bake over 248 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 120 degrees Celsius for those of you who are listening out of the country. In 2002, there were reports looking at acrylamide in French fries. Remember, people were talking about how our French fries could be giving us cancer? In 2013, the FDA issued guidance to the food industry on how to minimize producing acrylamide. So why would coffee get involved? Well, roasting coffee requires the beans to be heated to close to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. They had said at the time that the heat produced a chemical reaction between the amino acid asparagine and sugars, and the heat caused the formation of acrylamide, but the amounts were minuscule. You do get acrylamide from cigarettes, from exposure at work if you are exposed to plastics, food processing, mining, paper, agriculture, construction. But acrylamide in rodents have been found to increase several types of cancer. They say, but the doses were 1,000 to 10,000 times greater than what we humans are exposed to. According to American Cancer Society, most of the studies done so far have not found an increased risk of cancer in humans. For some types of cancer, such as kidney, ovarian, endometrial cancer, the results have been mixed. But back in 2017, American Cancer Society says there are currently no cancer types for which there is clearly an increased risk related to acrylamide intake. But I urged you guys back in 2017 to reduce your exposure if you could. Avoid smoking. Avoid frying foods, especially starches, to 248 degrees. Lightly toasting as opposed to blackening your bread. A dark, burnt bread could possibly give you acrylamide. I also don't know if charred meat could also do it as well. And then, because coffee has been found to lower your risk of liver, uterine, prostate, or mouth cancer, we recommended, that you talk to your medical provider about your coffee intake. Most of the studies said you needed to drink about 4 to 6 cups a day. That's kind of a lot, especially if you have high blood pressure. So we still need, research on this, but this is kind of one of the more recent studies looking at non-cancer issues, such as age-related macular degeneration. And having a family member who did drink a lot of instant coffee, now really struggling with their vision, and it makes you wonder. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Don't go away. Hi guys, Dr. Daliah here. Addictions can sneak up on us and come in many forms. Whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, porn, or something less obvious such as food, internet, or shopping, addiction can seem innocent at first and then evolve into an insurmountable evil. In our book, Addiction Basics, Caitlin Kalikas and I dive into the common addictions and provide tips for identifying and preventing these before they sneak in and take over our lives. Addiction Basics can be found on Amazon or my website, drdaliah.com. Check it out.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems. For example,
diesel fuel cetane levels.
The cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
This is an urgent announcement for anyone that's $10,000 or more in debt. Before you make another minimum payment, you need to know there are special programs that can completely free you of your debt. Total Financial Freedom can help you become debt-free in months instead of years. Resolve your credit card debt, signature loans, department store cards, internet loans, and timeshares. Call Total Financial Freedom now at 800-878-6020. for a free consultation. For 16 years, Total Financial Freedom has helped thousands get out of debt. You can feel confident when calling because Total Financial Freedom is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. Battling for years and years, stuck in the endless cycle of minimum payments could take decades. You have the right to get your debt resolved and substantially reduce your monthly payments. Call Total Financial Freedom now at 800-878-6020. That's 800-878-6020. 800-878-6020.
All right. We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer. And big thanks to you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Daliah, Facebook, The Dr. Daliah Show. And on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So, you guys, I don't know if you remember, but after the George Floyd death and trial, actually, after George Floyd died, I think this was before the trial, there was a UCLA professor who was asked that he be lenient on grades for the black students. And he, in his email, asked, well, how do you do that? How do we know who's black? Because we're online because of COVID. What if they're half black? What if the student is white but from Minneapolis? What? How would I do this? How would we do this legally? Especially, with Martin Luther King, saying that, we should not evaluate somebody based on the color of their skin. I'll read you the email he wrote back the student. But apparently the school, UCLA, suspended him. Now, the lecturer, he was a UCLA accounting lecturer, Gordon Klein. And apparently he was an expert witness in multiple high-profile trials. And most of his money that he made from his practice had to do with, his legal expertise. And after the school suspended him and his email went viral, he apparently was not touched. People wouldn't hire him. So he sued UCLA for $22 million in damages. Now, the trial is scheduled to begin tomorrow in Santa Monica. The two sides have engaged back and forth since September 2021, when Klein first filed suit. The trial date had been delayed multiple times. And he argues that UCLA's knee-jerk reaction to publicly suspend him and excoriate his reputation effectively destroyed his lucrative litigation expert practice, in which he was making $1 million annually. I'm in the wrong business. And so he said, by this moment, as a direct and immediate result of public suspension and excoriation, Professor Klein's expert witness practice has been permanently destroyed, according to opening statement argument. Whereas the defense says, he did not finalize the arbitration process. He had other issues they suspended him for. It was a tone and manner, allegedly acting unprofessionally. And so they said he was suspended more than just the email, even though Klein said he had a 44-year employment record that was unblemished. So this was the email he wrote. And see, where I kind of... I always kind of get a little antsy where you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And would there have been a better way to handle this? So apparently there was an email to him entitled An Appeal on Behalf of Black Bruins, because UCLA, the Bruins. So he writes back to the student. I don't have the student's email. He says, thanks for your suggestion in your email below that I give black students special treatment given the tragedy in Minnesota. Do you know the names of the classmates that are black? He goes, how can I identify them since we've been having online classes only? Are there any students that may be of mixed parentage, such as half black, half Asian? What do you suggest I do with respect to them? A full concession or just half? He says, also, do you have any idea if any students are from Minneapolis? I assume that they probably are especially devastated as well. Now, some people think he was being facetious, but it could be read as, if we're going to include people, we need to make sure we don't uninclude, because I could get in trouble. He said, I am thinking that a white student from there possibly be even more devastated by this, especially because some people might think they're racist, even if they're not. He says, my TA is from Minneapolis, so if you don't know, I can probably ask her. He said, can you guide me on how you think I should achieve a, quote, no harm outcome, since our sole course grade is from a final exam only? He says, one last thing strikes me. Remember that MLK famously said that people should not be evaluated based on the color of their skin. Do you think that your request would run afoul of Martin Luther King's admonition? Thanks, and G. Klein. So he basically puts his argument down going, okay, so if we are going to do leniency for black students, how do I ensure I got everybody in that? And then what happens if people from Minneapolis versus people from Oklahoma want to also have, because they're affected by the tragedy? And so some people think he was being facetious or passive aggressive. Others go, he was covering his butt. Because if you show any leniency to a student and you violate based on their color and you violate the Constitution, you could be in trouble. So in retrospect, there are probably some things he could have done to protect himself. I think where, he might win this lawsuit. Because he did, show all the different ramifications that can happen and the things that have to be taken into account. But what might have avoided the backlash is him saying, thank you for your suggestion. I will ask my dean or my chair of how to do this logistically, legally, and ethically to the codes of the school and laws of the city, and leave it, say, we will get back to you. And then in your email to the chair, say, look, this is what I'm being asked to do. How do we protect ourselves based on the following? Do we just pass everybody in light of George Floyd dying in Minneapolis? How do we, can the school make a statement on our behalf? Because it appears students are addressing professors. Because when I was a professor, I couldn't just randomly alter grades. I couldn't randomly show leniency. I had to go through the chair or the department head. So what I would have maybe done is that. And then, based on what the chair demanded you to do, I would then convey that to the students. But if the chair said, well, it's up to your own discretion, say, can I talk to legal? And can we be advised by legal? Because something tells me that if somebody is 1/4 or half or cannot verify their race, I could be in a lawsuit. And this is something that we've never addressed. This is, how do we show leniency? There's going to have to be, because my guess is if this was an appeal on behalf of Black Bruins, my guess is that might have also gone to other professors. So the school leadership would have had to come up with something. Now, when UNLV had the shooting 2 Decembers ago during finals, and students are like, I can't do my finals. I'm too upset. The school did an equal and all policy to everybody. And that's how they avoided any legal ramifications. We'll just make all finals optional. Some people disagreed with that, but others said, at least that's safe. And so, it's going to be interesting to see where this lawsuit comes from. But that's the big thing that I think schools have been grappling with, whether it's transgender or male and female and bathrooms. And you get sued either way. If a biological male ends up in a female bathroom and attacks, or there is a Title IX lack of, so in Title IX, unless they change Title IX, you were not allowed to show your body parts to somebody else. If a boy flashed his penis to a girl, that's a Title IX. If a boy undressed, in fact, an unzipping, ooh, did I forget to zip? That was a Title IX offense. And so if you have somebody who isn't truly transgender, and they're biological male and they're walking into the bathroom, but they claim they're transgender, the school is damned if they do, damned if they don't. They're in trouble for not allowing somebody who identifies as, I'm female today, so I want to use a female bathroom. Or they're damned if somebody says, look, I did not want to see him naked, and he was standing there in front of me naked. So there has to be better guidance, because you cannot have companies or schools or situations or professors in a situation where they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. And this is where we are with multiple things. So we'll let you know how this case progresses. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems and their solutions. For example,
Diesel fuel cetane levels.
in many states, the cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts. Due to a cleaner burn, there are less hydrocarbons and particulate matter in your exhaust. This reduces the blockage of your diesel particulate filter. Using Diesel Extreme generates 83% less DPF regeneration. The 6-in-1 Diesel Extreme formula also includes the most concentrated detergent on the market, lubricity enhancer, water demulsifier, rust and corrosion inhibitors, and a fuel stabilizer.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So I guess we are possibly looking at our third named storm this year in terms of tropical storms. I didn't know that we had the first two. Maybe I've been so distracted with everything else going on. But as we're entering into 4th of July holiday weekend, which it falls on a Friday night this year, which is pretty exciting, because then you have a much easier. I find it really hard when holidays fall in the middle of the week. I don't want the holiday moved just to make it convenient for a 4-day weekend, but we're probably looking at people taking off the Thursday before Friday. So I think a lot of people are going to turn a 3-day weekend into a 4-day weekend. But you need to be aware that there may be a tropical or subtropical development if you are in the Atlantic, Florida Gulf area. The National Hurricane Center is watching an area either side of Florida for the possibility of tropical or subtropical development over 4th of July holiday weekend, according to weather.com. Either way, the Sunshine State is going to possibly be having some severe storms. They say a cold front is working its way into the southeast and Florida later this week, where it'll eventually stall. Sometimes when dying fronts like this stall over the waters of the Gulf of the southeast coast, one or more areas of low pressure can develop and make an attempt at forming into a tropical or subtropical depression or storm. I wish I studied more meteorology. I think that stuff is fascinating. See, I would have thought a warm front, because the warmer weather and the warmer water produces many of the hurricanes. But I guess they say it's a colder, so I got to look into that. But according to the National Hurricane Center, they said there will be an opportunity for further development this weekend, by this weekend. But for now, the chance of tropical or subtropical development is low overall. Why? Because they have no idea yet if there's going to be an organized area of low pressure. So they just want people to be aware. And, usually hurricane season peak is August, September, but we do see hurricanes this time of year. In fact, hurricane season goes from June 1 to November 30th, but they even thought of changing the range and adding extra weeks into May because there's been some subtropical storms as early as May. But for now, it's still June 1. And here we are at the end of June, going into July. No surprise that we're starting to see some storms. Now, Colorado State University researchers predicted an above-average hurricane season for this year. They expected 17 named storms. The mean is 14.4. They think 9 of these 17 named storms are going to become hurricanes, 4 of which could be classified as major. Now, I know many of you look at these numbers going, but I only remember maybe 1 or 2 at most a year. Keep in mind, if the hurricane happens in the middle of the Atlantic and then it veers north or south and never makes landfall, we don't hear a lot about it in the media. So these big hurricanes are existing. They just don't necessarily make landfall to us. Unfortunately, though, they are preparing us that we might get landfall. North Carolina State University researchers are predicting a milder but still active Atlantic basin hurricane season. We don't get as affected by the Pacific cyclones as we do the Atlantic hurricanes. North Carolina researchers expect 12 to 15 named storms, milder than the Colorado State University prediction. With 6 to 8 hurricanes, 2 of 3 could be classified as major. So September is usually the most active month. End of August, early September. And so we look at hurricanes and we grade them on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. So you might have a tropical storm, there's tropical depressions, and then if the wind speed gets above 74, then we call it a Category 1 hurricane. We call it a Category 2 hurricane if the wind speeds gets to 96 mile per hour. We call it a Category 3 if the wind speed is 111, a Category 4 if the wind speed is 130, and a Category 5 if the winds are over 157 miles per hour. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. In southern Nevada, we've had winds well into the 70s. Now, there's no water with it, so they don't really call it a hurricane, but sometimes we'll hear the forecaster say hurricane strength winds. That's because it gets pretty windy. Now, when you look at these hurricanes, the most damaging ones obviously are 4 and 5, but even Category 3 can be devastating. They say in a given year, the Atlantic Ocean averages 12 to 14 storms, 6 becoming hurricanes, 3 becoming major. And, we talk about Hurricane Katrina because many of us remember Hurricane Katrina, the horrible damage. And Hurricane Katrina started at one point as Category 5. However, it was hovering in the Gulf. By the time it made landfall, it downgraded to a 3. But even as a Category 3, it killed 1,800 people, caused $108 billion in damage. The deadliest hurricane to ever hit U.S. soil, however, was the Great Galveston Hurricane in 1900. Over 10,000 people died. They didn't have the warnings. They didn't have the protection. They didn't have the levees. In fact, there's still monuments there in Galveston if you go on the damage. And their coastline, I don't know if they'd ever recovered. If you go to Galveston, the beaches are different. It's sad, probably because, again, it gets hit a lot. And so, according to Colorado State University researchers, they do believe that this hurricane season is going to be above normal activity. So what should you be doing? Well, real quickly here, they say that this tropical storm may be Chantel, named Chantel. So the names of our potential hurricanes was Andrea and Barry. Those are gone already. Chantel would be the next one. Dexter. Now, I don't know if you guys have been watching Dexter. I have. Dexter does not sound good. I don't know if I would name a hurricane Dexter. Aaron, Fernand, Gabrielle, Humberto, Imelda, Jerry, Karen, Lorenzo, Melissa, Nestor, Olga, Pablo, Rebecca, Sebastian, Tanya, Van, and Wendy. Hurricane Wendy. I don't know if I would trust that one. If all those names are exhausted, and trust me, we have some years exhausted all the names, they do have some supplemental names just in case. Adria, Braylon, Carthad, Deshaun, Emery, Foster, Gemma, Heath, Isla, Jacobus, Kenzie, Lucio, Michaela, Nolan, Orlando, Pax, Ronan, Sophie, Tayshawn, Viviana, and Will. We don't have a Hurricane Daliah. However, in the North Pacific, the Eastern Pacific, they do have a Delilah. People always call me Delilah, and Delilah in the Bible was not a good person. I'm not named Delilah. I'm named Daliah. But it's okay. Hey, at least you got the D right. So, for those of you going, oh gosh, I do live in an area. I always wait till the last minute. The stores are always closed. Start, very casually. Don't be hoarding, but, make sure you have water, food, generator, your board, things to board up your windows. They say if you do get walled up, you should have adequate water, about 1 gallon per day per person for at least 3 days. Don't forget the pets. We always forget the pets. 1/4 to 1/2 gallon of water per pet. The fish might need a different amount of water. Canned foods, flashlights, medical supply kit, batteries, blankets, cash, medications, and waterproof containers should be set aside. I know a lot of you look at the containers you get from the pharmacy as being fine and waterproof. Keep in mind the label can run. And the plastic, yes, even though it's plastic, I would still double protect. Get an extra bag or an extra container to put your medicines in. But keep in mind, if the label gets smudged, that can make the medicine if you don't know your dosing or you don't know what the medicine is. So I would make sure that you might want to, if you could find something like clean and sterile, to put like a little note and a little something inside so you could also know what the medicine is in case the outside label gets hurt. All right. Godspeed. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Don't go away.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit, and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799, and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
As an organ donor, your story doesn't have to end. The good in you can live on. In fact, you could save up to 8 lives and restore sight and health for many more. Sign up right now online as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You'll be happy you did. And just maybe, someone else will be happy too. Go to organdonor.gov. It saves lives. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
you're back on the Dr. Daliah Show, 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So I promise no spoilers, but I just kind of have to give you my opinion on Squid Game 3, all right? Squid Game, as those of you remember, was probably one of the biggest hits on Netflix. Coming out of South Korea, it was much different than a lot of the other things on TV or in movies, where you have people who have been trampled on through life and make financial decisions, or debtors, or get themselves in debt, and they feel like they have no other recourse than to join the Squid Games. And the Squid Games, and this is not spoilers, this is just in general what the movie's about. It's online, or the show's about. These games may result in their death. And they participate in these games with others in hopes that the fewer people that remain leave more money for them to share. The concept is brilliant, and this was a huge hit. In fact, Squid Game was even a bigger hit in America than South Korea. South Korea at first had some issues because it was really violent. I mean, when you watch this, you were like, whoa. Yeah, I mean, I even covered the pets' eyes. I didn't want the pets to see this. I mean, it was pretty violent. And still, when I watch it, I need to temper it with something else immediately, because you're like, I'm not going to be able to sleep. But the one criticism I have of Squid Game that we saw, I think in all seasons, but especially season 3, is they make Americans very cringeworthy, and they make Americans look stupid. And I'm kind of surprised, because in the story they have what they call the VIPs, where these are some people that are watching the games, or they are guests of the people running the games. And the scripting, the discourse is so cringeworthy. And I almost want to stop watching and just fast forward, because I cannot stand hearing how they speak or what they say. And because this was written in South Korea, you start to wonder, is that how they look at Americans? Why didn't the American actors go, we don't talk like this? But that was their perception of it, which is fascinating. I mean, it's worth watching. It's just, it's hard to watch that part with the Americans. And interestingly, the 3 biggest countries that Squid Game does really, really well in is South Korea, the UK, and the US. And they even make the UK actor very, I mean, it's really hard to listen to them. And I don't understand why they do that. I mean, maybe they wanted to make them, the people that run the thing don't have that sort of discourse or talk, but of course it's all subtitled. So the show, because all the actors are Korean, it's subtitled, except when they have the VIPs, they're using English, but it's just not how Americans would speak. But if you travel a lot out of the United States, it is amazing how people perceive Americans. I went to Disneyland Paris, and I thought that was amazing. I really like Disneyland Paris, but it's nothing like our Disneyland. But it was really, really nice. But I went to the It's a Small World. And It's a Small World, as you know, they take you around the world and they show you the different countries. So we see what France is like. You look at what Morocco is, and Thailand. And, and even though they might use stereotypical things, it's really beautiful because it shows you what some of the culture was introduced from each of these countries. Well, when you get to America in the Disneyland Paris, because remember, now America is the outside. It was very interesting how they had football and baseball, and how they characterized Americans. It was not insulting. It was, I kind of forgot about that. We're really, really big into sports, and we're really, really big into football. Now, our football is North American football, as opposed to their football is soccer. But But that was interesting because it's even though American football is starting to, they're playing games in other countries, and other countries love our football. That's really American. And so apparently that identifies us. They also had the whole cowboy yeehaw thing. So you had this, and even though I think you have cowboys in other countries, that's primarily an American thing. So it is interesting to go around and see how other people look at Americans. They many countries think we're spoiled. Many people think we're very we fight over things, that we stress over the little stuff. We are divided on things that we probably shouldn't be when there's bigger, more worrisome things, because these other countries are always either at war or they're dealing with threats and so interestingly, when we were in Italy, we were amazed at how many people were pro-Trump. And we were in Italy, I think it was back in 2017. And they were apparently they were having major immigration issues as well. And so I found that kind of fascinating. I'm not saying all Italians were pro-Trump, but everybody we met was like, "Oh, you're from America?" All they wanted to do was talk about Trump. So that was interesting. But I think Squid Game. I don't understand why they had to do that and miss their mark. How did they not understand that their biggest market were Americans, and you're going to make Americans look stupid? In fact, I cringe when I see those episodes. But, my husband hasn't watching it. I started watching it because he went to a movie with my sons. And I started watching a couple of the episodes. And, he comes back and he says, how was it? And I'm like, these guys are, the writers are sick. I mean, they're good writers. But, the idea of, how to kill people off is something that I guess they make an art in this. But don't expect Squid Game to be as good as the first one or the second one. Squid Game 3. I haven't seen the rest of it, but I'm already kind of disappointed. However, it is still good. And, maybe politics are, and maybe that's also why I don't like the whole American UK thing, because I guess because they're trying to make countries look, I don't know what it is. But, I like to look at shows where we don't have a lot of politics. Yeah, because Hollywood has really changed. I saw Snow White over the weekend. And Gal Gadot can sing. I was like, wow. I didn't know Gal Gadot could sing. I thought she did a very, very good job as evil queen. But again, the movie was, with the exception of a couple songs, it was hard to sit through. And I'm like, do you mess with a classic? Do you try to be woke? You also saw, they decided to take the dwarves and make them animated because they didn't want to hire dwarves after Peter Dinklage and his rant. Yet dwarves were like, well, how do we get work? You just ruined this for us. And then it looks like they might have hired one for one of the other characters. And so you saw they put it together as well as they could. It just, what hurts is it really could have been a hit. Snow White could have been an amazing hit. It's just, it was all marred with, the politics, as well as, is it Rachel Ziegler, the star? She goes on a rant, and doesn't, support the hostages, call for the hostages release, supports Gaza. And it just took a turn. And apparently a lot of people who worked on the film, and you could see there was a lot of work on that film, were ticked off because she basically ruined a lot of the success they could have had. So I'm hoping Hollywood goes more Squid Game, not in terms of the violence, but in terms of, let's try to be as, less political and more about the entertainment and the quality. Because if you look at the shows that are hits, Game of Thrones, Squid Game, maybe there might be some underlying politics very lightly, but, you're not entrenched in it. You're more entrenched in the story. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH, don't go away.
Can you believe, with all the recent violent protests, looting, and destruction, some areas are considering either defunding or abolishing the police? At a time when America's neighborhoods need the protection of police the most, some elected officials would rather create more chaos by playing politics. If you're sick of elected officials caving in to demands of the radical left, you're not alone. It's time we stand up and declare our support for local police. The majority of police officers are important partners in protecting our God-given rights. If you prefer freedom over chaos, then learn how you can help protect the local police that serve your community. Call today and request your free Support Your Local Police info packet. Dial 800-JBS-USA-1. That's 800-JBS-USA-1. Request your free Support Your Local Police info packet by calling 800-JBS-USA-1 today.